Hey, Changemaker! Welcome to Learning for Good, the only podcast that teaches nonprofit leaders how to leverage training to drive performance, improve capacity, and fuel their mission impact. Do you ever feel like your nonprofit is growing, but your people just aren't keeping up? Or like you're fixing the same problems over and over? Do you wonder how to build confident, capable staff who know how to lead, not just execute? If we haven't met yet, I'm Heather, and I know how hard it can feel to get people to do what's expected of them. Trust me, I have 3 kids. I've tried telling people what to do and how. I've tried the traditional training approaches, and I realized that just doesn't work. And that's when I started researching what does work. Now, I help mission-driven leaders use learning to drive performance, build capacity, and make change that lasts. And I'm sharing it all on this podcast. So block your calendar, turn off your Teams or Slack chat, and let's dive in. It's Learning for Good. My daughter and I had an argument recently. She was asking me to turn off school time mode on her smartwatch since it's summer. A reasonable request. But when she said it, my head went to bedtime. And I'm like, no way am I turning off Do Not Disturb overnight. Even if it's summer, she does not need a way to communicate with others late at night. So I told her no, and I explained my reasoning. But she didn't fully listen to my response about nighttime. Her brain probably shut down when she heard the word no. And it took us a couple of minutes to realize we were talking about different things. And she was getting worked up because she didn't understand why she couldn't text during the day. And I was standing my ground that we need boundaries overnight. When we finally figured it out, we went our separate ways, and I started poking around on my phone to figure out how to turn off school time mode. How much easier would this conversation have been if we had both listened to each other? If I had understood what she meant from the beginning? If she had listened to my reasoning and boundary and realized it wasn't even what she was requesting? This happens at work too. We make a request or communicate an expectation, and people misunderstand it, or they don't listen to the whole thing. They get caught up on something else, a detail, and their amygdala gets hijacked by an emotional response. Happens all the time. So how do we create a culture where we can best hear each other, where we can show up authentically and be seen and heard, where we can bridge people, expectations, and the systems already at work in our organization? It's a lofty goal, but we can't do it if we never talk about it. So today, I've invited Dr. Lori Beyar to join me on the podcast. Lori leads talent development work for a global nonprofit where she navigates complex systems and structures to create organizational strategy and leadership development for cross-cultural teams. And I know we're going to learn a lot from her today. Let's dive in. It's Learning for Good. Dr. Lori Beyar is a strategic executive with over 25 years of global experience leading leadership development, organizational strategy, and talent initiatives across nonprofit and international sectors. As Global Vice President of Leader Strategies at Crew, she shapes learning systems and strategic partnerships across more than 175 countries, equipping leaders with the tools, networks, and pathways to thrive and multiply their impact. Grounded in a deep faith that has shaped her life since her college years at the University of California, Santa Barbara, Lori is passionate about creating environments where people are seen, supported, and empowered. Her leadership journey has taken her from early education work in California to executive development in Central Asia, Russia, and across Europe. Known for her relational leadership and ability to align big vision with practical solutions, she consistently brings people and systems together to unlock growth and resilience. Lori is known for building trust across cultures, aligning vision with execution, and designing frameworks that grow people and results. Over 30 years, she's maintained donor relationships that fully funded her work, reflecting her authenticity, credibility, and strategic clarity. She brings a unique blend of strategic clarity, cross-cultural experience, and a belief that leadership development is most impactful when it's personal, purposeful, and inclusive. Now based in Chicago, Lori and her husband Keith have 3 adult children. Whether designing a leadership pipeline, coaching executives, or gathering leaders around a shared vision, Lori brings energy, humility, and a deep commitment to helping others grow into their fullest potential. Lori, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Heather. Thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to be with you.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. I'm excited. We've kind of gotten to know each other a little bit over the past few months, and I'm excited to get to know you even more today and to be able to share that with the Learning for Good listeners as well. So I always like to start with the same question, which is just tell us a little bit about your career journey. Like, it's one thing to read a bio, but what was that journey like? How did you get to where you are? And then if you want to tell us a little bit about your work at Crew as well, that would give us great context for this conversation.
Sure, absolutely. And yeah, my career journey definitely surprised me as well. I did not expect to be here where I am now. So growing up as a kid in the 80s and 90s, I knew very much about the Soviet Union. So after the Berlin Wall came down in 1989, I took a summer trip to Czechoslovakia. And I met people there that had not had the resources or the opportunities that we definitely had in the West at that time. And so I knew I wanted to live in a cross-cultural reality. I wanted to go somewhere different than the US. And that led me from that summer where I met my husband and we got married, and we ended up moving to Uzbekistan and then on to Moscow, Russia, and then on to Hungary, where we are based. And all while my passion for leadership development, training, really seeing people and helping them become the very best version of themselves. And then taking that and contributing it to a team that reaches goals. And it's been amazing because whether it's Central Asia, Russia, or Europe, there's been a lot of similarities to how people grow, what they want to accomplish in life. And so it's been a roller coaster, wild ride. I wouldn't have changed anything. It's been super fun and really life-changing.
I love that. My listeners have heard this before, but I like to think about our career journey as a tapestry, where if you're looking at the backside, which is what we can often see when we're in it, right? It's a mess. You have no idea what's happening. And then when you look back, it's like looking at the front side of the tapestry where it's suddenly this like beautiful artwork, right? And all of the things just came together. And it's hard to even see that when you're in it. Like you said, your career journey surprised you too. So you just never know where it's going to take you.
And it's funny you say tapestry, because in these places I've lived, carpets have been really a big part of the cultures.
Yeah.
So I've adopted the collection of carpets. And yeah, they look ugly from the other side, or you're confusing, or where does that string go? Or not sure how that ties in. But wow, on the other side, beautiful.
Amazing, for sure. So tell us about your work at Crew. What are you doing there? I know you're leading global leadership initiatives, but tell us a little bit about that, because we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of the global environment that you're working in and things like that.
Sure. Well, the global environment really started way back in Central Asia, where I've since, like you said, 20 plus years, I have been on multicultural teams. I don't think there's been a time where I haven't either been on a multicultural team, had a boss who was from a different country, or myself was leading a team. So I've been steeped in a very diverse, inclusive reality for a long time. So right now, my current position is I develop all of the programming that we offer, and I help countries. So Crew Worldwide is like a federation of a lot of countries. And so I lead the division that offers leader development offerings for professionals, and also internally helping our employees to grow and develop as they do the work.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really great context to kind of think about where you sit within the organization and who you're focused on with your leader development. And obviously, working in a global environment, working in any federated structure is a challenge, but working in a global environment adds some complexity as well. So, what are some ways that you're helping teams work together seamlessly?
I loved your story about your daughter because I thought, yeah, if we really could listen. And I thought that happens in a family that's pretty self contained, very similar culture. Yes, different personalities and expectations, but it's just not addition. When you do like cross cultural teams, it's like exponentially more complicated. But I love that story because I can so relate. So, yeah, so creating teams that work together seamlessly, I think the first part of that is always starting with what we call a low context reality. And Erin, I really like Erin Meyer. She wrote the culture map, great resources. I'll put a plug in for Erin Meyer. But there's this concept of low context. And she and many others who study cross-cultural relations is like any international team or even multicultural team, you need to start with the premise of low context. And what that means is we are assuming that we do not understand each other's context, that there is a lot behind each of our lives. And so what we do is we offer what I call believing the best. And it is so foundational to that seamless work. Do I approach this team assuming that if you say something that's offensive or hurtful or I don't understand, that you are not intentionally doing that to me? And so that believing the best and the concept of low context, that everything needs to be really clearly stated or explained because we don't have each other's cultural filters to understand. So I would say those two are kind of foundational principles, believing the best and having a low context communication and functioning.
Yeah, that it makes a lot of sense. I think even in the, like you said, kind of simplified example with my daughter, we weren't necessarily believing the best in each other in that moment, right? Like, why would you need to text in the middle of the night? And she's like, well, why can't I text during the day? And so there is this moment that the clash happens because we haven't stopped and assumed that maybe we don't understand what the other person is asking and believing the best of them. As you're creating teams that are working this way and you're investing in people, developing them to be this global team, global leaders, what challenges have you faced specifically in doing this work globally?
Yeah, that's a great question because there are numerous challenges. Yeah, so the challenges, I think, well, in any team, right, you have a goal you're trying to accomplish. So that's on any given team, everyone has this common goal. And so you have the normal team issues. But what multiplies those issues is the complexity of not understanding each other's ways of doing it, how they talk about it, approaches, communication styles, speed, values, all the things that in a much more homogeneous cultural situation, you can all function similarly. But when you have a multicultural reality, that looks so different. Are you more communal? Are you more individualistic? Do we value time or do you value relationships? All those things just get amplified when you're trying to accomplish a goal together.
So as you're thinking about these challenges and how you're developing leaders to kind of navigate these, how do you make sure that the challenges you're solving for are like the root cause or the real problem versus a more surface level need? Because a lot of times when there's a conflict or when there's a thing that you're trying to accomplish, there's what it looks like it is. And then there's what's beneath the surface and what's actually causing the problem. So how do you make sure that the thing that you're solving for and your leader development work is the real kind of root cause of the challenge?
Yeah, I'll compare this a little bit to when you think of a garden. You have grass and you have weeds, right? So the grass is what is the constant, the stable, what you hope it's like. And the weeds are the problems that arise. You can't just focus on the weeds. Otherwise, you don't have good grass. And so I would say there's 3 things you have to do to get good grass. And then you're able to tackle the weeds. And with the good grass, I would say I call them my 3 A's. I'm sure they're not original to me. I don't know where I heard them. So if I'm stealing someone's idea somewhere in all the many books I've read, but the first one is awareness. As a team leader, because right now I oversee the globe. I have 7 continents that I oversee. And on my team, I have 7 different continental cultural realities that we're working together. So there has to be first the awareness. How are we different? Who are we on the team? What are our values? So all that investment as a team leader to make sure everyone's aware. And one of the key things of that awareness is having people tell their stories. Like, how did they grow up? What was their home? And of course, you let people be as vulnerable or not as vulnerable as they feel comfortable. But the first A is awareness. And I will get to the problem, but I'm setting the grass first because you can't get to the problem if you don't have good grass in this scenario. The second A is acceptance. So if this is how people come to be a seamless team, you have to be aware of each other's difference, and then I have to accept them. And that it's different, but not wrong. A little phrase, different, not wrong. So you value relationships. I value time. Someone who's from the Netherlands and someone who's from Africa, they value very different things. So do they accept those as differences and not wrong? And that's usually the second phase team members get to. Okay, I see we're different. I accept that. But really, you get really good grass if you get the third A. And that's appreciation. So if you can move from awareness to appreciation, like not only do I accept, first aware, then accept you for who you are, but I so appreciate and I see the value you bring and the way you see the world and how that makes us better as a team and makes us accomplish our goals better. Then you have that teamwork that is really seamless and so powerful. So as a team leader, it's my responsibility to make sure we're investing in those 3 A's, to move the team through that to the point of appreciation. And that's what I call your good green grass. And that's what people on the team, when they say, oh, I love being on this team. It's so refreshing. I feel known. I feel seen. It's because they're appreciated for who they are. So then how do you deal with the problems? When you have good grass, then the weeds are a lot clearer. If your grass is messy and not very nice, the weeds kind of look like everything, right? So you want the weeds to stand out. And so one of the key things that I do on our team in identifying what is the core problem is that you definitely spend a lot of time as a team either getting data, both quantitative and qualitative, but also how does the team from the different perspectives understand the problem? Because if you pick like even 1 or 2 people from the team to identify the problem, you're going to get a skewed view. And it's, that old thing, like, the people standing around touching the elephant, and everyone says what it's like, and everyone says a different part of the elephant. How many times have we heard that story? But it's because it's true. So I think the very simple way that I do to make sure we identify the problem is, 1, you don't identify too quickly. You get external data. And then thirdly is you pull every perspective. If you have 6 cultures represented, you get every 6 culture representative of what do they see as the root problem. Then you can begin to take apart the problem cluster and figure out what is the first step of solving the problem. That was a really long answer, but that's how I think we have to do. We build the grass and then we can attack the weeds.
Do you wish you could connect with other nonprofit learning and development leaders? I I know what it feels like to want someone to bounce ideas off of and to learn from, someone who really understands you and your work. Imagine if you could have a simple way to meet people in the field, ask questions, and share information. That's why I created the nonprofit Learning and Development Collective, where nonprofit L&D, talent management, and DEI leaders can connect with each other quickly and easily in a virtual space. When you join this community, you will walk away with a new, diverse, and powerful network and a sounding board for your staff development needs. So if you're ready to exchange ideas and collaborate with your peers, come join the nonprofit L&D Collective.
I love that. I love your approach as far as like looking at the grass. It's very asset-based too, right? Like, how do we make sure that the environment is a positive environment? And then we can more easily see where there are real challenges. If everything is messy, to your point, it's hard to figure out which ones are the weeds. It's like, I know nothing about gardening, right? So if I go out to my flower bed tonight and try to weed, I'm going to pull out flowers. So it really is like moving through this process of investing in creating that good green grass and then looking at pulling the weeds. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I love that analogy. So when you get to a point where you need to then solve that problem, solve for that challenge, how do you get there? How do you solve the challenge so that performance meets expectations and organizational culture still thrives?
Great question. I love simplifying the complex. That's what I'm known for doing. And one of the most simple ways that I do this is continuing to go after results while you're doing the problems, is making sure you're identifying the difference between the result and the path to results. A lot of potentially our OKRs, our metrics, sometimes they're measuring the path to results. And so like, how many of this or how many of that or whatever the metric is, we all have different metrics, right? But really breaking down what is the desired result and what is the path to get there, and how do we allow flexibility based on cultural realities that people design their own path. So that is a huge part of it. And so like I said, I have 7 people on my team. How I interact with each of them is really different. And how they each go about accomplishing the results, the path is really different. So one is identifying the results and making sure we're separating the path versus the results. The second is very intentional performance evaluation along the way. And that's not different than any other team, right? You need to have those check-ins and how we're doing, dashboards, metrics, all the things we do. But again, the dashboard, the metrics, they need to measure the right things. And are we constantly dividing up what is the result versus the pathway? So for example, we have a dashboard. We actually measure both, but we only collectively count the result. The pathway is so that we can celebrate each other's work. And those work looks different. So that gives us more of a reporting structure so we can talk about, oh, I did this. And then we celebrate how each other is going about it differently. So we track it, but it's so intentionally meant to look different. So it sounds real simple, but it's actually kind of difficult. You really have to work hard to separate the difference between what is the result and what is the pathway to get to the result.
Yeah, it really takes intentional leadership and really listening to the individual people on the team to understand their view of how to achieve that result. And yeah, to allow that flexibility, right? It really does require that trust and that relationship that sometimes be hard to find in a leader. So like, in my head, I'm thinking about like scalability and how do you create this in other teams and things like that. And there's so many valuable lessons that you've shared here, but a lot of this too is good leadership. And we should be doing this in all of our teams. Good leadership.
Yeah, not just multicultural teams. And I get it. We have scalability, we have standard metrics, and those things, you still need those.
Yeah.
But I think as a team leader, we track those. But I also can have our internal metrics that separate those two between results and effort or pathways. So I think sometimes as leaders, we take the path of least resistance. Well, if corporate or the big, they ask for these metrics, those are the only metrics we're going to take. And the onus is on us as leaders. What is my team and my division? I run a whole division, which is really complex. We have 18 different products and they've become integrated. We have a consistent framework. That takes work because no one gave that to me, but we had to create that. So I think the intentionality to say this matters.
Yeah. To say it matters and then act accordingly. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. So obviously there are a lot of complexities in the work that you're doing from an organization perspective, from the multicultural team that you're leading to developing leaders across the globe. What advice do you have for other nonprofit pros who are working across cultures or in these kind of complex environments?
It's a great question. And I think one of the things, and this, again, I simplify the complex. So I think a lot of times as leaders, if we actually just consistently did the more simpler things, we would actually see the transformation we want to see, rather than looking for the new tool, the new system, the new whatever. And so as much as you can, I understand there are limitations. There's limitations in our organization. But as much as you can, how do you help people tell their stories? And that personhood of who they are becomes incorporated either in shaping the team norms, shaping our goals, shaping the pathway. The more you can give someone their unique contribution opportunity, the more you're going to get engaged employees. And it's not a big shock, but it's really, we don't do it sometimes. And if you ask yourself, like, if I'm given more ownership or more opportunity to shape it, then of course I'm more engaged in the results. There's a book called Joy at Work by Baki, and he basically uses the metaphor of a basketball game. I don't like basketball, never played it. I don't know, just not my sport, but I like the metaphor because what he says is that when you're on a court, the most thrilling moment that a basketball player has is when they're given the ball and they get to decide, what do I do with this ball? And how do I become part of the story of this game? And I think of that often. How can I include them in everything from team norming to pathway development to task forces, decision-making, all the things that I can give away is like, how many times can I give someone else the ball? And man, the engagement, the ownership, those are non-issues because people are so invested and they're so part of it. And so I love that metaphor. Who can I give the ball to?
Yeah, that's powerful. It's powerful to think about that feeling, to put yourself in that person's shoes, the basketball player's shoes, and then eventually like the team member's shoes of like, somebody trusted me with the ball.
Yeah.
And my team is relying on me to do something with it. So yeah, I can see so much how that builds trust. It gets people engaged and they want to do good. They want to be part of that story, as you said. So that is such great advice. And I love that way of looking at it.
That is true across the globe. Every culture I've been in, people want to be entrusted.
Yeah.
and maybe how they're going to play with the ball or pass it on is going to look really different. And so my second thing I would say, you asked me what I would tell people.
Yeah.
One is, how do you give people the ball? The second is, my number one value that I want to live out is curiosity. If there's anything I can ask, hey, tell me more about that. Why did you decide that? In a very honest, curious way, not condemning or judgmental or corrective way, because people know. Doesn't matter what culture you're from, there's something like curiosity as a team leader of multicultures, being curious of your people, how they think, where they come from, why they do what they do, what are the things they're passionate about, what are their strengths, all those curiosity is so important. It's important as a team leader, but it's also important as a team member. Because as a team member, am I curious about my other vice presidents? And that's really a lot of we talk about how do you as an L&D or talent development or O&D become that trusted advisor, that person at the table. It's influence. And people want our influence when they feel we know them. Who likes unsolicited advice, right? Like the woman on the street who tells me what I should do, who has no idea who I am, doesn't know my story. Of course, I don't want to give her that. I don't want to listen to her. But when my colleagues know that I know them and I'm curious about them, then my influence has weight because they know I'm for them. I see their realities and I'm bringing something that's valuable. So I would say those two things, giving someone the ball and being very curious.
I love that. Such great advice. I am sure we could talk for hours about all the lessons that you have learned along the way and just so much relevant stuff for people in learning and development and for nonprofit leaders who are really just trying to figure out how to lead teams and work towards their goals and accomplishing your mission. So you provided just such a wealth of insight today in our conversation. And I thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Heather. That's very kind and encouraging. And I'm so thankful that you asked me and these great questions. And I love talking about this stuff. So I hope we get to talk again.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Lori.
Thank you.
Imagine if everyone on your team felt understood and appreciated. If everyone could work in a way that best suits them and is aligned with their values. Imagine how engaged that team would feel and how much you could accomplish together. I think that's what I love most about Lori's approach. She helps her team feel seen, heard, and valued. And we can do this too. We can do it for our teams in L&D. We can also help our leaders throughout the organization do this for their teams too. What an impact that would have on our nonprofit. I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.
Hey friend, was this episode helpful for you? Did you like what you heard? Do you want more content like this? Here are 3 things you can do. Hit subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice, share this episode with a colleague. This means so much to me personally. I read every review, but it also helps me learn what content you like most so I can create more of what you want. All right, turn that Teams or Slack chat back on when you're ready, and I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.